from the influencers, you know, that you meet, that stuff that I'm not really touching on very much, but every time I listen to some of that, I learn quite a bit. Right? There's a lot of organizations back then engineering us. I feel invaded. Engineered.
Yeah, you look a little engineered.
Yeah. Invaded. Engineering us.
I was too arrogant. I was too full of shit. And I just didn't want, I wasn't going to get a sponsor. I wasn't going to do service work. I certainly wasn't going to do the steps, and I was not going to do God.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Dave Smith a little bit later about Buddhist recovery centers and recovery and addiction and all sorts of fun stuff. Well, not real fun, I guess. It's a bad descriptor for this one, but
it was enlightening.
Enlightening.
When I was doing
like
the show notes, I kind of changed it. I went for fun, and then I changed it to enlightening.
To enlightening.
Like, I don't want to call it fun. It was a good chat, though.
First, as always, Grandmom Spaghetti Dunlop. How's it going, buddy? No regretty.
How you doing?
Good. Pretty good. Yeah.
I'm pretty pumped, actually, because we had a really, really good pot. Like one of those nights the other night where we had like 3 interviews lined up. And it was just one of those nights that made me realize like why we're doing this, because we had just great chats with super interesting people and some real rare chats about very, very intriguing stuff, you know?
Yeah, some good ones for sure coming your way.
Like unique.
We started recording a lot more doubles when we're on recording night, so I guess we're just going to start probably dumping extra episodes out. We'll probably end up doing like 5 a month or something, it seems like.
Yeah. And then we also have the extra black budget
Plus
feed.
we have the black budget feed.
So you're talking about extra in the normal feed, really.
I'm talking about extra in the normal feed, just extra interviews. We're just stepping it up, you know?
Yeah.
We want to interview too many people.
There's too many people. There's a list that's even growing faster than I can imagine. 4.5 years into this, and it's growing.
Yeah. So we're going to start releasing more episodes. We're going to go from probably 4 a month to 5 a month.
Plus the black budget feed.
Budget feed.
And that's the best way to support us.
If you're not supporting the show, now's the time.
Yeah.
Because you're about to start getting a bunch more everything.
Yeah. So we're going to have a black budget episode out soon, right? In the extra feed, it'll be one on Disney, I think. Or no,
we've got one coming out. We've got one coming out on a bunch of Disney symbology and hidden stuff and things like that, which sounds like it's going to be great. We're recording it this weekend, so that'll come out probably early next week. And then another week or so, Psilocybus 2 will drop.
Enter the Mushroom again, yep.
Yeah. So it's a little more lighthearted.
Yep.
Last one's pretty lighthearted too. But it's a pretty good one. I think you guys will enjoy it once the Grom Steak's done editing it for me.
Yep.
There's like 5 hours of shit to whittle down. Can
we talk a little bit about the logistics around the support?
Sure.
So people, if you click on, well, it's in the show notes as well, but if you go to www.grimerica.ca/support and choose any option, like a one-time donation or a monthly, Darren will email you daily. So every day he sends out an email to people who have done this. Not every day, but whenever it happens. We do it manually.
That's right. And you copy and paste that. That's an RSS feed, not a regular link. So you need to copy and paste it into your podcast player under the Add a New Podcast. And then it'll automatically aggregate all the new episodes. If you're not using a podcast player, then you need to go through the support page. If you go to the support page, there's a link. And so if I email you that RSS feed and you're not going to use it, just email me back and ask for the password. It'll give you the password to the password protected website, and everything's on there as well.
Oh, I see what you mean. So that's a backup way for people that don't use podcast players, really.
Yeah, the YouTube people, and there is actually more people than I thought that aren't using the podcast.
They listen by the website or by YouTube or whatever, yeah.
That's right. We could definitely use some more support, though. I was running the numbers the other day. I think we're still hovering around 1%.
Yeah.
For support. It'd be nice to see that number hit like 2. Other shows are doing a 10. Some shows are doing 10. Those are the people that hold back, though. We don't hold any content back from you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just holding it that you guys can find in your hearts, that you find a little value from the show and you throw a little value back our way.
Yeah, we want to do it without ads, and we do have expenses here, fixed expenses. I mean, the support has really helped because it's helped pay off the debt that we put into this. Plus,
we're able to start doing some interesting things, like we're able to try doing the little video presentation with Matheson. That's on the YouTube
that's
channel
coming
now.
out. That'll be an extra piece coming out.
Well, it's already on the YouTube channel. So people can check it out now if they want to watch the YouTube. We're going to release it as bonus audio right away.
Yeah.
But you can see it on the YouTube channel where we pull up all the
star maps,
constellations and things like that. So that's all sort of stuff that we would have never got to if we wouldn't have had support at some level.
Yeah.
But that level's still really low compared to other paywall things. I mean, we get that the value for value model was always going to be a little bit lower because we're not really selling you anything. I guess we do have the black budget apps now. But anyway, if you can, check out Grimerica.ca/support and see if there's anything there that works for you. And if there's not, of course, the stuff that you can, there's a bunch of stuff you can do that's free. And there's no excuse for not doing that thing. If you've listened to like 50 episodes of the show and you haven't reviewed it, shared it, and rated it.
And we know it's a tough thing to share because a lot of the stuff we talk about is pretty controversial and personal and spiritual or whatever.
So share it if you should sign up for somebody. You should assign somebody. You should be signed up for the newsletter, review the show, and share the show.
Yeah.
And by the way, now you can share the show a little easier because the app's out.
Oh, geez.
I've been getting I've been getting a bunch of shit because the Android app's not out yet, but that's in production. It should be out in about 2 or 3 weeks. They're telling me. Of course, they told me that about the other app too, and it took like 6 months. Seemed like anyway.
Yeah.
But it's out now. So you just search Grimerica in the App Store. So if you've got someone that has a phone, but they don't know how to do the whole podcast thing, and listening through the website is hard, and even the YouTube thing can get tough. Now you can just go in the App Store, search Grimerica, download the app on their phone or their iPad, and they'll get every new episode of the show just as well. And it presents the artwork really well, too.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And, of course, that's more money. That's more money that comes out of the show, comes out of our pockets.
Yeah, that costs us a couple $100 a year.
Yeah,
that plus the
costs, everything else.
And stuff.
So, yeah, support the show, guys. Grimerica.ca/support. We'll stop yapping now about that.
Thanks.
Get into something else. Thanks. Big thanks to the people that do. We definitely don't want to undermine the people that are supporting the show.
You can also email us. I mean, we wanted to talk about that as well. Spamgram, GRAHAM at Grimerica.com. And people send in their stories and trip reports and experiences and feedback, and it's great. Like to connect with the listeners and read this stuff in an intro before our interviews.
Word up.
We have a timestamp in the show notes as well, so if you don't want to listen to this jibber jabber, then you can just fast forward to the interview. Usually we talk for 20 minutes to 45 minutes or something like that. Get the listeners involved. So I got some appropriate for this chat with Dave Smith on recovery and all that. I've got some sort of bad trip reports and also some recovery stories from listeners that I've been sort of accumulating.
Accumulating?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I got a couple synchronicities as well. If we want to get into that, or we can.
What do you want to start with?
Well, I don't know. Let's get into the trip. Let's get into the.
Come on, spit it out.
The recovery email, and it's kind of a bit of a trip report as well, and sightings and stuff. He talks about a lot of stuff on there.
I don't know if I have a recovery email jingle.
No, just do like the spamgram or something.
Another edition of the Grimerican Goodies by the people, for the people.
That's another way to support the show. You can send a jingle in. Oh, did you get that? There's been people actually sending new jingles in.
Oh, they've been coming in like crazy. Yeah, that's actually more of a song. That one.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The songs are starting to come in.
Oh, right.
They always pick you. Well, that's because you're one of the best interviewers in the world, and I'm just a dope.
Oh, you got that one.
Yeah.
I didn't afford you that one.
Yeah, you did.
Did I?
Yeah.
He was kidding.
We'll see how long fucking Joe Brick has to wait for his stickers.
He was kidding.
I know he was.
So this is from MK Ultra, actually. And that's
we should mention that. He wanted a big
MK.
thanks to big shout out to Joe Brick for the donation.
Oh, he says you're not supposed to read his name on the air.
No, he said to say his name.
I think he said don't say his
don't
name.
worry about saying it because
Oh.
it might get his coworkers to donate.
Yeah, step it up, coworkers.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Joe is now king of the group.
And he'll have
he's
some
head
stickers
Grimerican
for his
in
welding
charge.
helmet or whatever.
So on all Grimerican related matters on that work friend crew,
Yep.
I have to say that Joe's
Joe's a man.
his opinion is,
The top.
he's probably right.
He's probably right.
Yeah. If you guys are disagreeing, Joe's probably right.
If not, he's pretty curious.
Yeah. It could be.
Okay, so here we go. This is from
Go Joe.
This is from MK. Hey, Graham. I recently started listening to this podcast, and it has been amazing. I've only listened to a few podcasts in the past, and even that was rare. I listened to Spotify. Oh, you know what? Just before I forget, if you're emailing us or even contacting us on social media, it's good to know how you find the podcast. That's our only marketing research, is actually hearing it from you guys. Besides the, some stats that give us some
We'd like to
information.
know what your favorite show is, how you found the show, and what the worst show was.
No, I mean, you don't have to get into that many details. Just how you found us is good. That helps.
All right.
So he says, I listen to Spotify, and you guys were recommended. Spotify knows me too well. As soon as I saw the Moai with the doob in his mouth, I thought, damn, this is for me. I only started listening a couple of weeks ago, but I'm already on episode 100. I listened to...
Did he start at 1?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know how people can go all the way up.
How do they even know it's 100? They're not numbered.
I think we started at 100, didn't we?
I don't know. The new iTunes update is killing me.
Really?
Trying to get the show to look right.
It would be interesting that if people do listen to it in chronological order like that, it would be interesting to see how we've changed, and hopefully we're changing for the better. Because you're kind of out of the loop and disconnected when you're looking back.
Why don't you just go back and listen to the first couple?
Me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding? I don't have time to even research the guests' content. I don't ever listen to these shows.
No?
No.
No, me either.
I listened to EP 234 first. Oh, here we go. Since it was the newest at that time and was just blown away. I had to start from the beginning. See, I should have just kept reading.
Ephraim Palermo.
I recently sent myself to treatment for alcohol dependency. I think I could get that right. And I couldn't believe when you agreed with one of your guests about being an old 12-stepper. It was the first of 1,000 things that has drawn me closer and closer to you in the show. I am a drug addict for the past 20 years, and I'm 30 now with a wife and children, and treatment taught me something very important. A spiritual experience is key to life. Having had that, and being clean and sober for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to put all the pieces of experience together. This show and its guests are helping me do that every day. As far as sightings or encounters go, I've never personally seen or encountered, but I don't not believe. I was working an outdoor remodel project with my old company and had to leave to pick up my daughter. When I got back, my two partners were acting very weird. I had my daughter with me, and I thought they were pissed that I had to leave and that I wouldn't be working for the rest of the day. However, the next day they explained that they didn't want to scare my daughter. They had seen something. In the middle of the day in Wichita, Kansas, they explained it wasn't so much an object with 3 glowing orbs on the corners as much as a lack of an object. It slowly got closer and closer, and at one point all 3 orbs separated and went flying off in a different direction. I didn't see, so I can't explain it all that well. But like I said, I don't not believe. Having been a heroin junkie in the past, I've had numerous NDEs, a bit too much for me to get into, but they do have a lasting effect. Also, I just got past your first lucid dreaming episode. I never knew what I was doing. For the past few years, due to alcohol, I haven't been dreaming, but sobriety has changed that, and not only am I dreaming again, thanks to this show, I'm wildly lucid dreaming. As a brother in recovery, I'm sure you understand the flood of using dreams you get once you get sober. Well, last night was the first time I had a lucid using dream, and I could deny myself the drugs and alcohol. I woke up crying. I didn't know how powerful that could be. Well, hang in there, buddy. You still get, this is me now. You still get using dreams after like almost
Are you going to read your
years. What? No, I'm just talking to you now. I'm just explaining that the using dreams keep going, but they're not like, they're good dreams because, you know, it does make you realize that
I don't get using dreams.
You don't dream, really. Or you don't remember them.
I don't remember them.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just dreaming about sniff and blow like crazy, and I just don't remember.
Maybe you should just go abstinent for a week off of the ganja, and you'd start dreaming.
Maybe.
Yeah. Let's try it. Experiment.
I really want to dream that bad.
Dreaming's not that important.
I could use the rest.
This last bit is an OBE/psychedelic experience. About 10 years ago, I was living in an apartment in Dallas, just south of the airport. A couple of friends and I decided to take some LSD, mushrooms, and MDMA. I always like to go a little further out than anyone else, so I took 3 hits of acid, ate 5 grams of mushrooms, and took a half a gram of MDMA. It was an amazing night. The fog was so thick, we were sitting outside listening to the planes land at the airport, but you couldn't even see the lights. At around 10 in the a.m., we had mostly come down and decided to go eat at Waffle House. About halfway through the meal, I felt absolutely sick and had to go outside immediately. I could see the fog had begun to lift, and as I leaned against the wall and slid down, and as soon as my ass hit the concrete, I was rocketed up into the sky. I was circling like a bird looking down at the Waffle House. I could even see myself sitting on the ground through a break in the fog. I noticed a black SUV pulling into the parking lot and people getting out. As soon as the first person closed their door, the sound whooshed me back into my body, and parked in the parking lot was the black SUV and all the people I had seen getting out. Now, mind you, I thought I had hallucinated the whole thing, but my sickness was completely gone. The people walked past me, and I smiled before I got up to walk in. I looked up. Oh. So he says, the people walked past me, I smiled, and before I got up to walk in, I looked up. There was a huge hawk circling in the sky above and a break in the fog.
I was going to go with Graham Hawk Seeker Dunlop, too.
Were you?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I've had it on my phone for a while.
Hawk Seeker? Why?
I don't know. You seem to be all about hawks. You just love hawks.
Not really.
No?
It just happened that one day. And people like this, reading about hawks.
Seem like a hawk
Writing
guy.
about hawks. So anyway, thanks for letting me ramble on. Love the show. Love you guys, and I will be supporting soon. Thanks for the hard work, guys. Your universal brother, MK Ultra.
MK
Wow,
Ultra.
I forgot how awesome that email was. It's been a while.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that's good. And I hope everything's going well, one day at a time.
No kidding. Got a synchro now?
I could. Yeah, I do. I actually have a crazy synchronicity.
Crazy synchronicity?
Yeah.
Ooh, shit. Which one am I going to pick?
I want a good score for my synchronicity. If Graham reads it out, then Darren might give it to me. Hey, don't you please read it low. Yeah.
What you got?
This one's going back to an episode. Actually, I should probably link to this episode in here. I'm just going to make a note in the show notes here.
What episode?
I won't tell you yet. So this is from Nicholas.
You won't tell me.
From Orlando. He says, hi, Graham and Darren. I've been a listener for about 2 years now and always enjoyed the beginning banter between you guys, and this is my first time reaching out. So I travel for work quite a lot and have had the opportunity to visit a lot of places. My most recent gig, I was on my way to Atlanta, Georgia from Orlando and decided to listen to your guys' latest show with David Charles Plate. As I was driving, David was discussing the synchronicities between the release of the movie The Visitor and the two big hotel fires in 1946. One fire at the MGM Grand in Paradise, Nevada, which is the county that the Las Vegas Strip is located, and the Weinkauf Hotel. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but when I got to the hotel that I was staying at for my show, I could tell it was a very old building and had been remodeled. It's called the Ellis Hotel on Peachtree. After I checked in, I decided to go and find some pinball machines to pass the time because my show wasn't until the morning. When I got back, there was a group of people outside the hotel, and I started talking with them. One of the ladies said that she was sensitive to paranormal things, and she believed that this hotel was haunted or cursed. So I decided to look up the history, and it turns out that the hotel we were staying at was the fucking Weinkauf, and it had been renamed. Needless to say, it was a really hard time for me to fall asleep that night, and I made sure I checked all the fire exits to make sure they weren't locked. Anyway, thank you guys for reading this, and I hope Darren gives me a good score. P.S. I'm a music producer by trade, and I was thinking about doing a jingle for you guys. Any suggestions of what you guys might want or need?
I want a gram rap.
A what?
I want a gram rap.
A gram rap?
I want someone to cut your voice up a bunch of episodes and make you a rap.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair to ask for. Maybe just that giggle would do.
That's like the chorus.
Yeah.
I don't know. We got so many jingles. We could always use more. Like, I don't like to. I think they're better when people just send them in.
Well, we do need,
and they
certain
don't always
ones.
just have to be jingles either. Like, people are doing little song things now, or people do little skits that I play at the end of the show. Did I play the coffee enema one?
Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty disgusting, really. That one.
It's a bit much.
Yeah.
And I'll play it at the end of the show.
It was well done, though. I mean, it was very well done.
It is very.
Oh yeah, there's also a perpetual chat that we've got going on. Chats that people like to fuck around in.
Sometimes they send around naked pictures of themselves.
I would like to know what his favorite pinball game is, though. I would say Medieval Madness is the classic, the best game ever.
I like Street Fighter 2.
Pinball?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
AC/DC's pretty. They got a lot of good ones, but. My buddy's got a couple pinball games in his house. He's got like 4 or 5. Yeah, it's awesome.
Fuck, I'd like to have a pinball. We should get pinball machine for the satellite office. As long as it's imaginary, we might as well have it filled with imaginary things.
Just to make it clear, we don't have a satellite office. So yeah, thanks for the synchronicity. Well, what are you going to score that one after that David Charles Plate one? And
stayed in the hotel.
Stayed in the hotel that he listened to the episode on the way down. I mean, that's pretty good. It's got to do with us. He's offering to support the show by sending a synchronicity. So you're going to bump it up like that.
$6.42.
Oh, that's pretty weak. Really, that's it.
Okay, I'll give it an 8.92. Actually, no, I'll give it a 9.
No, you're going to bump it right up to a 9?
No, 8.92. Okay. 8.92.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Well, I got a couple, this is kind of long too, but I do have a couple crazy trip reports.
Trip reports?
Yeah, kind of bad trip reports. Like, we talk about recovery and this and stuff, and we talk about some good trip reports. Like, some drugs can be enlightening, some of the psychedelic kinds and stuff, but sometimes you can have some pretty bad.
Oh, you take us down, and then I'll bring us back up.
Okay.
Psychedelics are catalysts of consciousness.
I had a good trip on the weekend, if anyone's wondering. I did a lot of crying. But it was mostly from laughing so hard.
This is from Don in Eaton Rapids, Michigan. He says, once when I was younger, a friend and I were hanging out in the cemetery near my house. We were parked and just kicking back and smoking a little weed. This is back on Northern Lights. First hit the scene in the early 90s. I don't even know what that is. So we decided to do some nitrous oxide, and we're using the big balloons, the ones you bounce on a string, hold 3 crackers each. Somehow I had the bright idea to see how much I could inhale before passing out. I then cracked 3 into each balloon. I hyperventilated the first one in and out, and then devoured the second and third the same way. The next thing I knew, I was standing or floating on what I now think might be dark matter. But at the time, I couldn't figure that part out. For some reason, I was compelled to reach out as if there was a door in front of me, and I gripped the door knob and turned, and it pulled. The crack of the door. I leaned forward, stuck my head inside to sneak a peek, and what I saw was completely indescribable. But that being said, it was like all sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, every sensation laid out in front of me. It was beautiful, but it scared the shit out of me. I slammed the door, took a step back, and the next thing I knew, I was staring. The next thing I knew, I was staring at the stars on my back. Ooh.
So
I was staring, but the stars on my back with my friend freaking the hell out, saying that I was not breathing and that he thought I was dead. I could also remember and still feel everything that was shown to me until I tried to tell my friend about it. It was like completely wiped out of my brain. I can try to explain it that way. I did hear, but it doesn't do it justice. Sorry if this is such a long, rambling report. You guys are great. Don't try this at home, kids. It wasn't a very good idea. And I probably lost a lot of brain cells.
Brain cells are overrated.
Oh, come on. That's
No,
not
they're not.
good.
You
No,
definitely
that's-
need your brain cells.
Yeah.
Neurons.
So there you go. Yeah, don't do that.
Is that the last one you got?
No, I
One
do
more?
have another one. Yeah, I might as well talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay, this is from Billy.
Billy M?
Billy W.
I don't know, Billy W.
Bill W. That's actually Bill Wilson's, that's his, the guy who started AA way back in the 30s. Bill W. That's his name.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you don't know, I think I'm going to try and get Emery on the show.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. Okay, so trip report. So I've been meaning to send you guys a trip report for a while now and just don't really know where to start. But first things first, I've been listening to you guys for about a year and a half. Well, that seems to be a time frame.
We got some listeners like a year and a half ago.
Now I've heard every episode, and I've also recommended a guest or two, and you've had one on, which was Patrick Jordan. I found the show through the Higher Side chats. Okay, on with the trip report. Well, that's interesting. You found the show through the Higher Side chats too.
How do you find us through the Higher Side chat?
Because he mentions us a couple times.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
I know he listens. Didn't know he mentioned us.
I have many I could choose from, but figure I'll give you the bad trip. Well, that's good timing for this episode. In case the worst trip I had. And anyway, I had done a lot of mushrooms growing up because I lived close to a shroom field that has now turned into a car dealership. That's usually the way it goes.
Oh my God, that's just they pay paradise. Put up a parking lot.
It wasn't until I moved to Baytown, Texas from Pasadena, Texas that I ever tried LSD. It was crazy back in the 90s when I was in high school. Acid was everywhere in the city of Baytown. I have suspicions that the city of Baytown is some sort of test laboratory for different drugs because of the waves of them that come and go. That's interesting. He's probably onto something there. That probably deserves a bit of research.
It's about burnt my hair off.
In Baytown, Texas. Anyways, me and a few buddies were at a party where everyone else was drinking, but we were waiting on a friend to show up with the acid. He did and gave me 2 hits of window pane and told me he would be back in a few to pick us up. I ate the 2 hits and didn't take long for the colors to start creeping in on the walls. He showed back on the wall, up the walls. He showed back up and asked where my 2 hits were, and I told him I already ate them. He said, "Why? I was going to put them in your eyes so you could trip harder." So he pulls 2 more out and talks me into letting him put them in my eyes. It burned bad, and I just held them there in each eye for about maybe 10 minutes until I couldn't take the burning anymore, and then ate the rest of the paper. It didn't dissolve in my eyes. Oof, that's scary. Needless to say,
Jesus.
I was tripping balls by this point.
Shit in your eyes, people.
And you don't even really have to do LSD. You can meditate instead if you want to reach some sort of. Anyways, I used to do it at the party. I never had enough reverence for it back in the day.
Nobody's fucking meditating into some LSD. I've heard Kundalini, maybe.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a combination of meditating and yoga?
It's kind of
Masturbation.
breath. No, not really. Breath work. I mean, you could reach it by breathing if you wanted to, if you're really into it.
What, masturbation?
No, like
Climax?
orgasm through
No.
breathing, but it's pretty hard work.
Have you tried? Have you tried?
No, kind of.
No luck?
Well, it's hard, not from. I mean, you know.
Okay, here's the
We've
experiment.
talked about this before.
No, here's the
No,
experiment.
I don't want to get
Here's the
into this right
experiment.
now.
Wait, save up some blue balls again. Like a month.
That's what you
And
probably
then
have to
try
do.
doing
That's,
the breathe exercise.
that's probably what you
Yeah.
gotta do. I think women have
And you can have visual stimulation.
yeah. Women have an easier time.
And then Wim Hof it out.
Okay, good. We're just getting into this part. Okay, in my city of Baytown, they had just built a new suspension bridge and retired the tunnel that people used to drive through to get into the city. We rode to the bridge, taking turns laying back of the pickup truck, watching the big yellow cables go by, riding over the bridge. It felt like the cables were pulling you up. After a while, I started to get really paranoid because I had a pocket full of weed that I stole from my dad. But I kept thinking that every car behind us was a cop chasing us, and I threw the dope. And I'm sure I was looking like and talking pretty crazy. There was 5 of us, 2 in the cabin of the truck and 2 more in the back. My 2 buddies in the back could tell I was having a bad trip and were huddled together talking about maybe they should get me home. Me, being paranoid and tripping balls, thought they were conspiring against me. I cupped my hands.
I've been there.
I cupped my hands to look into the back window of the truck and see the driver, who I just met that night, pass the passenger who I had known for maybe about a week, a pistol. I freaked out because I asked my other buddy what the gun was for, and he said we were going to go shoot it. I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "To the middle of nowhere." I freaked out thinking they were going to kill me because, well, to be honest, we were some crazy-ass kids back then, and I just moved to the city and met these guys maybe 4 months before all this. I jumped out of the back of the truck while we were doing anywhere from between 60 to 75 miles an hour. I hit my feet, then slid for a while on my face, and shot back up on my feet, running straight for a semi-truck. I realized what I was heading for and turned into the field next to the feeder road. Then I heard my name being yelled from the truck. I remember showing back up at the party, and a girl gives me a huge glass of milk, saying, "Drink it." As soon as the milk hit my lips, I started to see the actuality of what just went down. By the time I finished the glass, I was sober and felt the pain. I still have scars on my face and body to this day, and my jaw still pops out of place now and then from that event. Needless to say, I never put acid in my eyes again, nor will I recommend it. I did, however, learn a lot about the mind and how acid works. Hope this wasn't too long, but I just wanted to tell you how it all went down. Love the show and keep up the good work. Much love, Billy.
Thanks, Billy.
Another one, just don't do this at home. I mean,
No.
really, just you don't even have to do it.
No,
No.
don't put acid in your eyes.
Go listen to this episode with Dave Smith, and he can talk about mindfulness. And
I'm an experienced psychonaut. So when it sounds like I'm having a blast, it's because I am. But that's because I know what I'm doing. Tread with caution.
Yep, tread with caution.
Acid's a different animal, too,
Yep,
than mushrooms.
yeah. It's a little more, I don't know, artificial, chemically kind of.
But that's a set and setting thing, right? I would never trip with someone I just met 4 months ago.
4 months ago, he was with people that he just met that night.
That's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a set, but I mean, that's what I would have done when I was younger. I mean, that's what we, that's
Mind
the
you,
thing.
I just
is
did
I
that
was
to,
just-
to M and J
Yeah. Well, no, that's different. That's
because
different.
we know him so well. It's different.
Yeah.
Common.
It's kind of
common
different, yeah.
denominator.
Yeah.
We're the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
From the pictures that are flying around the chats, you would think that we are the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
Just didn't take Grimsteak and Kilgar along to turn that into some sort of weird homoerotic cesspool.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Join the chats.
But what was I going to say about that?
You're going to say join the chats.
stop on by, stop on by. Stop on by, stop on by. Stop on by, stop on by. Head on over to the Grimerica chats.
The jingle Felix wrote while he was kicked out of the chats.
So I do have the UFO quote, or we got to keep on going with that. The profound.
Darren and Graham are going deep. It's a profound UFO quote of the week. Words to ponder.
I like that jingle.
We got a feedback the other day. He's like, I just listened to my first episode. He's like, lose the intro, lose the jingles. Thanks.
That's good feedback.
Yeah.
Fast forward. Did you tell him that?
I just
FFW?
blocked him.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, on YouTube, I don't block him. I mute him.
Oh, that was YouTube. Well, you can't even listen to those trolls. Okay. This is it. An object like an oblong pearl drew steadily closer until perhaps a mile away when, right under my gaze, as it were, it suddenly vanished. But it reappeared close to where it had vanished, and it drew closer. I could see the dull gleam of light on nose and back. It came on, but instead of increasing in size, it diminished as it approached. When quite near, it suddenly became its own ghost. For 1 second, I could see clear through it, and the next, it had vanished. That's Sir Francis Chichester, June 10th, 1931, flying in the Gypsy Moth over the Tasman Sea.
Tasmanian Sea?
Right on. So yeah, there's a time, like I said. Oh, jeez.
Bingo, bango, social media jingle. Don't forget to rate, comment, and or subscribe to the Grimerica newsletter. Bingo, bango, social media jingle. Don't forget to rate, comment, and or subscribe to the Grimerica
newsletter. You got some social media stuff?
We've got on David Charles' plate. Isn't this the same guy who created the whole Pepe meme while pretending to be independent? I said no, and he said, okay, not the same guy.
Do you not pre-read any of these things before you do this segment?
No.
It's like just
From Coop W. Great show today, guys. Thanks for sharing the info and the time it takes to put it all together. Bless up and stay frosty. From Ben Bishop, Grant Cameron is like a neutron bomb of information. We got from
that is an
Baron
amazing
von
episode.
Taco Cat. Shit, you said my motherfucking name on the podcast. I'm famous and shit now. To which STVBRSN replied, as far as I'm concerned, you've been famous since the first time I saw one of your comments years ago. You have pretty much my favorite username yet.
That was probably Brian Sovereign himself responding. Was that to the the Sovereign Tech episode?
Was that Brian Sovereign?
I don't know.
STVBRSN. They've been following us for years.
Oh, no, that's not him.
Best thing about Grant's pace is you totally slow down with the nachos and red wine refill. Have to do more Legacy Grant audio. He's so laid back and nice and slow. Really gives you all the time in the world to try and soak it all up in one sitting. Perfect meeting of similar minds. Bunch of stoners versus hyperventilating dude in red zone for 3 hours. Hockey reflexes actually made it possible to hop into a barely noticeable pause on the side of Grant more than once. Don't try to listen to this at like half speed. That's cheating.
Wow, there was a lot of feedback about
Grant Cameron Unleashed is a great idea, really dropping some knowledge in this interview, and I'm only 140 minutes into the thing. First rate episode, guys. Classic stuff. So interesting. I tend to agree with most of what Grant's saying here. RE UFO is a phenomenon. At least it makes sense to me the way he puts it. And then we have MMA Lafitte. It's better at 1.5 speed once you get used to his speech patterns. You're welcome. It's like I usually listen to these interview podcasts at 1.25 speed. I think every time I hear Grant speak, he's going a little faster than the time before. Soon we'll have to slow him down to understand him.
I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes as well, since you got so much feedback on that.
On the
that
Randall Carlson slideshow.
Yeah.
Randall Carlson equals amazing. Everyone else equals unbearable.
Good thing we had him on 5 times.
Yeah. Oh, we got, here we've got, who's this? Voidus Yin Yang. This is the best Stuart Hammerhoff interview I've ever heard.
Wow.
I've corresponded with him as I research music, consciousness, energy healing. From quantum logic and math as non-Western music theory. Hammerhoff agrees that consciousness is more like music, but non-Western music or an anharmonic. I also corresponded with the Indian nanotech researcher he mentions, testing the ultrasound amplitude resonance of the microtubules.
Oof.
Also, Penrose says the real secret is time is asymmetric, and this stuff goes back to the Big Bang. Amazing stuff. It also explains the ecological crisis today as well. I have more details on my blog. Thanks.
Wow. I wonder how that explains the ecological one.
You asked about Wim Hof. I connect the science of his Tumo training with Stuart Hammerhoff research in my free PDF. Just Google Idiot's Guide to Taoist Alchemy, Needin, Qigong Yoga, Nigong Training PDF archive. Thanks.
Come on, are you serious?
Yeah, well, I don't know what those words, I don't know how to.
Idiot's Guide to Taoist Yoga?
Idiot's Guide to Taoist Alchemy, Needin, Qigong Yoga, Nigong Training, Qigong Yoga, Nigong Training PDF archive. Could have just gave us a URL. So collagen is piezoelectric and resonates at ultrasound, which activates the vagus nerve and stores up energy as negative entropy. There is also an infrasound feedback, the theta brainwaves. So as Hammerhoff says, outwardly, it seems their brain and metabolism slows down while internally the frequency goes higher. Subharmonics of frequency have stronger amplitude.
Wow.
That's a pretty crazy comment.
We should get that guy on the show.
We should. Hey, come on the show. I'll see if I'll comment that. I don't think he listens to all the episodes.
No, he's probably...
Video presentations.
But a link
took
to that,
you guys
though.
long enough to get here. Hashtag respect. The sound on the channel seems to be dead. It only comes... Yeah, I know the fucking YouTube only comes through one ear. I don't know how to fix it. I've given up. From big thank you to Darren and Graham having me over to the igloo for another visit to the land of Grimerica. This time to record a first ever live video show complete with star charts and ancient artwork. Really enjoyed our conversation and hope everyone else will too. Here's a new blog post talking about the show, which includes links to related content for those interested in exploring further.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Right on. Thanks, Darren. That was good.
Not bad, eh?
That's a good little set. It's a fun little segment. So I'm going to put links to Hammerov's and Grant Cameron's episodes in the show notes, and that link to that Idiot's Guide to Alchemy, Qigong, Nigong meditation or whatever. Darren said. You're just totally insulting somebody. You can't.
I know. I'm going to send you a screenshot of it so you can put the URL.
Oh, I'll find it.
You can't put URLs that are like 30 words like that.
I can. What do you mean? I'm going to search it, do the link, and I'll put it in the show notes.
It's not a link.
Yes, I'll find it.
Graham will find it.
Yeah.
You will find it. Or he just will give up. Both are possible. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it, man. This is a great episode with Dave Smith and talking about, the start of refuge recovery, the Buddhist-inspired path to recovery, and also his Dharma saint, his rebel Dharma saint. He does a lot of teaching and workshops and coaching, and that's great. Great episode.
Yeah, it's a gooder. Enjoy, guys. Get the app, do everything in the show notes. Most of all, enjoy the chat with Dave Smith.
All right, tonight we've got Dave Smith with us. He's a Buddhist meditation teacher, and he's empowered to teach through the Against the Stream Buddhist Meditation Society, and he's an addiction treatment specialist. He helped start Refuge Recovery like seven years ago. I can't believe it's been going that long, and that's the one that I participate here in Calgary. So it's good to have you on the show to talk about all this stuff. Dave, welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, it was a great little workshop I attended with you. Really, really appreciate your help and helping people in recovery and that type of thing. And usually we don't always go back into people's backgrounds on this show, but I think for this one, especially, we're talking about this kind of stuff. It's probably good to talk a little bit about how, your background and how you found, your path into Buddhism and recovery, that type of thing.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to talk about it. It's a long story, and it's a story that continues to carry on even to this day. So it's kind of a evolving process. So, I grew up in New England. I grew up in the Boston area. And was one of those kids who just never felt comfortable ever. And, I was around a lot of alcohol growing up. I thought alcohol and drugs were just something that everybody did. And I couldn't wait to grow up and drink alcohol like my dad and all his friends. It was something that was always on my radar. And I had a lot of trauma in my early life in the arena of like loss. So I had a sister, an older sister, who died in a car accident pretty tragically when I was 11.
Wow.
Back in 1989. And then so that really just kind of, at the age of 11, I was, probably had what they would now identify as post-traumatic stress symptoms, and didn't have any resources. And, it was in the 80s. The school guidance counselor wasn't exactly very helpful. And I just turned to drinking. I was drinking pretty much fairly regularly by the time I was 12, and started doing drugs soon after that. And, probably an unpopular thing to say often, though, is, I don't think I would have survived my teen years if it wasn't for drugs and alcohol. I mean, it was my only coping mechanism. It was my only strategy to really get through teenage years. And teenage years, from what I remember, are usually not so great for most people. But they certainly weren't for me. And then when I was 18, I just graduated high school, and my girlfriend, who I just fell in love with, first apartment out of high school, we got run down by a drunk driver, and she got killed, and I was there left to discover the body, and another just very traumatic event, a really traumatic episode that resulted in loss and death. And so at that point, my trauma was pretty substantial. And also I had this deeply strong feeling that like the universe or God or whatever was against me. I felt like the world or the universe or whatever was sort of out to get me. So I was a little bit paranoid, and I was also just a little bit, I was a lot of it disappointed by life. And it was actually at that time that I started practicing Buddhist meditation. So my story is pretty nonlinear in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Is I drank and used and was doing Buddhist meditation retreats throughout my whole 20s. But the big thing for me, and the thing that I really still am blown away by, is when I did learn basic mindfulness practice. So I was introduced from a Dharma teacher at the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. Basically breath awareness, this practice that we probably take for granted. The basic idea that I could take my attention out of my mind and I could put it in my body or my breath. And that if I paid attention to my breathing, mindfulness of breathing for, 10 or 15 seconds, I just kind of felt better. And my body would relax, and all of the stories and the anger and the betrayal and the loss and all of that self-centeredness, really, that self-centered thinking was just all thoughts in my mind. And that I could actually get out of that was a very profound and radical shift for me at the age of 18.
Yeah, no doubt. That's similar. And in a way, I had, even during, I didn't get clean and sober till I was 38. And in my early 20s, I took some meditation courses as well. I think that's one of the things that helped me, is having that kind of spiritual interest or background when I was younger. So when you talked about the needing alcohol and drugs in as a teenager, I was thinking about society and how much shame I had around using. Like, I really had to hide it from everybody. I kept it to myself. Like, do you think that if society was a little different, that you as a teenager and others as a teenager could cope with, experimenting with that a little bit more without having the shame around it?
Well, I actually, everybody's different, right? We all have different experiences. I didn't have very much shame about it. I was pretty proud of it. I hung out with the druggies in school, and we partied and raged. Yeah. Also, my father drank a lot. So I had no stigma that it was really bad or wrong. I just thought I was partying. And, then I got into bands, and I spent about 10 years playing in bands and touring in bands, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit. But I watched, MTV, and, was into Guns N' Roses and Metallica. I wanted to be a drug addict. I looked forward to it.
Right. Yeah,
that's
a
probably
good point.
Uncommon point of view.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For me, it was like, I totally want to do that.
Yeah, for me, it was okay, the drinking and the soft drugs and stuff like that. But when it got hard for me, that was when there was a lot of shame around it.
Yeah. That happened to me as well. But that was more fast forward 10 years. That's where it ended up. For sure.
So is that when you realized that you had to leave, like, renunciate from this?
Well, I kind of, so from 18 to 28, I drank, I did drugs, I sold drugs, I played in bands, and I had this kind of rock and roll lifestyle. That worked for me for many years. But I did sit these Buddhist meditation retreats every summer, and I did know that there was a better way to live. And I did feel a little bit like the way I was living and the way I was drinking and using, I did feel like it was out of line with my values, but it was just too much fun to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
So when it got to the end for me, probably the last 3 years of my drinking and using, I was in a very, very difficult sort of paradox of, like, I had kind of gotten everything I wanted. I was, in my mid-late 20s, I was touring in bands, I was putting out records, I was playing lots of big festivals in Europe. I had, like, kind of succeeded. And so my music career was kind of successful, but my inner life, shame, guilt, self-hatred, my inner life was just so vacant that I didn't know what to do. And, so I was so addicted, I just tried to drink those feelings away. And I tried to use at my shame or self-hatred. And it just didn't work. It just stopped working. And interestingly enough, for me, quitting my band was actually quitting harder than quitting drinking, because I had my self-centeredness. I was so caught up with being this person in this band who did this thing that actually, and I quit drinking the day I quit my band. So it happened at the same time.
Wow.
But yeah, for me, it just brought me to that place of, like, A, I felt a lot of shame and self-hatred, and B, I wasn't happy, and the shit wasn't working anymore anyway.
Yeah. So then how long from then did you get into like teaching this stuff, or actually taking that part of it very seriously?
Well, I actually have to say that, truth be told, part of my unfolding was, so basically, here's kind of a crazy story for you. So I get clean and sober. I'm 28 years old. And so what do you do when you get clean and sober? You go to AA, right? Like, I knew about AA. I knew I was probably going to end up there someday anyway, because I used to go in my teenage years. And I just wasn't having it, man. I was too arrogant. I was too full of shit. And I just I wasn't going to get a sponsor. I wasn't going to do service work. I certainly wasn't going to do the steps, and I was not going to do God. So when I had about 60 days sober, I decided I was going to go to Insight Meditation Society and sit the 3-month course. So every year they do a meditation retreat that's silent, no talking, no eye contact, 12 to 14 hours of meditation a day for 3 months straight.
Holy shit.
So I I did that with 60 Days Sober. And I went in there with this arrogant attitude that I was just going to like bang this thing out. I was like, I'll sit for 3 months. I'm just going to get this alcoholism thing, this whole addiction thing. I'm just going to like fucking meditate it right out of my system. And I totally didn't. That's not what happened. And so I left that retreat totally confused. I mean, there was a lot of good things that happened on that retreat. I don't want to speak about it too poorly. It was, it did work. I'm still clean and sober 15 years later. So, but I got the sense that what happened was I really, at that point, knew I just had to do the 12 steps. I just knew it. I had this kind of attitude that Buddhism, especially at this point in America, was like for like well-adjusted, affluent white people, who like didn't have real problems, and I actually had real problems, and I needed to. So I went back to AA and just totally surrendered. I just went in there. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. I learned in Buddhist practice. There's this term we have called Sila, which is one of the 3 trainings. So we train in ethics, we train in meditation, and we train in wisdom. Mm-hmm. And AA is really what taught me ethics. I learned how to stop stealing. I learned how to stop lying. I learned honesty in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned about personal accountability. I learned about inventory. I learned about being of service to others. I learned compassion in AA. So I spent 5 years after that retreat not doing a whole lot of meditation and really just going to 5 meetings a week, step work, sponsors, book studies, commitments. Like I was just totally, and my crew, it was Boston, so it was like Massachusetts, AA, big book thumper, like hardcore, man. And that's what I needed. I needed somebody to look at me in the eyes and say, you need to sit down and shut your mouth, young man, because you got nothing to say. And, that's one approach, and it worked for me, and it's frankly what I needed at the time.
Yeah, man, those hardcore men's groups can be pretty intense and, hold you pretty accountable to what you're saying you're going to do and all that kind of stuff. I think that's pretty healthy. Good foundation there.
Yeah, it was. It gave me a really great foundation. So, that was kind of, the first 5 years of my sobriety was really, I started a construction business, and I was a worker amongst workers, and I helped my family out, and, I met a girl in AA, and I got married, and I did all the sort of stuff that you do in your first 5 years, and I'm totally grateful for that.
So what about that 3-month silent retreat? I know people that can't even get through the 10-day Vipassana. How was that? That must have been very, very hard. And did you have any, moments of clarity in there besides, coming out of there and realizing that you could probably use AA? Was there any, ego death or anything crazy like that?
Well, it was long, and I probably had some traumatic symptoms going on. I might have been dissociating some of the time. I had everything from deep, deep concentration to really, really blissed out states of mind. I had all the beautiful things that you hear about in meditation. Mm-hmm. And I had lots of suffering, and I had lots of doubt, and I had lots of blame, and I had lots of... I think what I learned on that retreat, truth be told, I don't think I knew it at the time. Right. And I don't think I knew it for maybe a long time, maybe not even up to this moment, because no one's ever really asked me, is I actually learned humility. Mm-hmm. I learned humility in the sense of I realized there was something about my mind-body that was just really, really powerful. And, I learned, craving in the mind and the mind's tendency to want things to be different. My whole life, man, up until this moment, what do I suffer with? I suffer when I want my life to be different. I want this moment to be different. I want this day to be different. I want my girlfriend to act different. When I want other, I suffer.
Exactly.
And I got a big dosage of that. And, when you're staring down the barrel of the mind and the heart, all day long, I just really learned that I knew that I needed to do something that was actionable. I was like, I'm not going to meditate my way out of this situation. I'm actually going to have to act my way out of the situation. And so that's what really gave me the humility to go, you know what, I need to start taking responsibility for myself.
Wow. Yeah, I totally resonate with the not wanting to be in this moment. I mean, I find that mindfulness for me was the key to some sort of contentment or happiness that I always wanted before. And it really comes down to just being okay with most of the moments. Like, of course, I still would sometimes want to be somewhere else, or I obsess about being in another state or whatever. But for the most part, when I'm driving, I'm okay with where I'm going, and I don't, need to be somewhere else. And when I'm home, I don't need to be somewhere else. Like, it seems like that's brought the mindfulness itself, because that was to me the practice of being in the moment, in that moment, and kind of accepting where you are. That was the key to me.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's what mindfulness does, is it allows us to live in the present time, or, one day at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. It's all the same kind of thing. And it's just trying to, I think in a very pragmatic way, I think the Buddha was a radical pragmatist. It's just trying to learn how to live the life you're having rather than being preoccupied with the life you could be having or should be having if things had gone differently.
Yeah, exactly. Huh. So can you...
And, that's tough.
That's what?
That's tough,
Oh, yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. No, but it's one of the most powerful tools. I mean, it is an actionable thing. The more you try it, the more you learn about it, the more you really do feel a difference, like a physical difference of just being able to step away from those obsessive thoughts and separate yourself a little bit. And that's just only a thought. It's like I heard one of your recent podcasts. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that you do that podcast as well, the Rebel Saint, right? We'll put that in the show notes for people. I was listening to your four foundations of mindfulness, and you're really talking about how your thought is like your sixth sense in a way, or your feel. You've got all your other senses, and your thought is just another one of those. And you talk about only the 18 things that can happen to you, that you can be feeling or sensing. There's really only 18 things. I mean, can you dig into a little bit about how mindfulness can help with craving and recovery, and just how important of a tool that is itself, and how you can, grow that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my whole world, right? So it's a great question and a hard question to answer. But I think that so if we really want to just be real basic about it, it's just that, like, okay, we're talking about suffering, we're talking about the mind. And so most people, doesn't matter who they are, if you ask them, they can identify that they suffer in ways that seem to be quite unnecessary. Right? So that's the sort of baseline for the mind. The mind creates suffering, and much of it seems quite unnecessary. So the million-dollar question is, if what I said is just true, are there things you can do? Is there something you can do about that? Now, you're not powerless over that. There is a way in which you can intervene on the suffering process. And, the Buddha figured this out 2,600 years ago, and he developed a whole system of living that addresses this very idea. So what you need to be able to do is, if that's true, and if you can follow me down, if you can follow my trail of breadcrumbs right now, then you have to learn how to watch your mind. You have to be able to sit, and this is what the neuroscientists call metacognition, thinking about thinking. Mindfulness is that you can actually, in a science perspective, it's kind of the most evolved part of the human brain. It's this prefrontal lobe, prefrontal cortex. It's not hardware, it's software. And so when we're mindful and we bring our attention to sensory experience, like the body and the breath and feelings and emotions, and we get our attention out of thinking too much about everything all the time, we kind of get this sensibility. We kind of get this access to this mindfulness or Wi-Fi signal. And once we're able to establish that, then we can use that as a way to recognize the ways in which we suffer that seem to be unnecessary. Are we driven by anxiety, which is a term we throw around? Well, what is anxiety? Anxiety is being preoccupied with the future, worrying, predicting, fixing, inventing problems that haven't happened, and then trying to come up with a strategy to fix them. And so you can watch your mind do that, and you can also get out of that neighborhood. And just with the past, we find that, Anxiety typically is about the future. Depression is typically about the past. And stress is typically about right now. So if I'm always scared and anxious about the future and feeling guilty and regretful about the past, I'm going to feel really stressed out right now. And I need tools and skills and resources on how to manage that, other than smoking crack and drinking alcohol or eating cookies or looking at, the world is a buffet for addiction behaviors that medicate stress. Well, maybe there's a meditative contemplative practice called mindfulness that you can use to manage, to reduce, and to ultimately eradicate that stress. Now that right there, what I just said, I think is a very attractive idea for most people.
Definitely.
So then it's like, well, then now what? Right now, you got to start practicing mindfulness, and you have to come to terms with the timing and the situation and the stress of that, and the fact that the mind is, the mind can be a tool, and the mind can be a weapon, and it's like a knife. It can. And so, are we becoming skilled in using our mind as a tool for genuine happiness and liberation and contentment? Or are we using it as a weapon for creating blaming or having contempt for the world or giving ourselves a hard time? You can look at it in that way, just like a knife or a hammer or whatever. The mind is very similar in that way, that it can be used as a tool or it can be used as a weapon.
Yeah. So noticing that a craving is really just a craving, and there's some power in acknowledging something without attaching yourself to it that would dissipate it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what makes it so hard, because the craving and aversion, wanting, not wanting, or fight or flight are protective. That's not software, that's hardware. That's that midbrain amygdala, the craving in the mind-body system and the nervous system. Like an alcoholic walks into a bar or a restaurant and sees a tray of beers, walk by with the waitress, there's going to be craving is going to arise. I don't think that you can chop that out. I don't think that you can chop out these cravings and aversions. You can learn how to manage them. You can learn how to not act on them, but they still, because of our biological instinct to have pleasure and avoid pain, where we have evolved as creatures with these instincts. We just have to learn how to manage them. And so we have to be careful. We don't think mindfulness is going to, we're not going to have some sort of emotional lobotomy where craving just goes away, but we can definitely learn how to manage it much better.
Right. And it will dissipate over time, right? Don't you find? Specific ones, not craving in general, because it's always there in the background for different types of things. But, as you heal from one type of, addiction to another, I found anyways that the specific cravings do dissipate over time.
They do, I think. And I think that there's a kind of a barometer that I use, is that I think they have, so there's the frequency of how often do I feel craving. I think the frequency decreases.
Yeah.
And then there's the height of the craving. Is it craving number 8, number 9? I think the height of it decreases over time. And then how long I'm in that craving episode, the duration of the craving also decreases slowly over time. So I think there's a way you can look at it more in a system of these triggering events. They happen less frequently, they're not as strong, and they don't last as long. And so that's kind of the nature of tolerance. So we could say that mindfulness is a way to create tolerance for craving, or tolerance for discomfort, or tolerance for anything that's unwanted. And so the more tolerance you have, the more able you are to manage with these experiences as they arise. And so, I think that you're right. They do dissipate over time, but you actually have to put effort into that. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to do something.
Can you overdo it with tolerance and stuff like that? You get to the point where you're just sort of too passive and you let life sort of steamroll you?
I think that does happen for a lot of people. Yeah, that's right. I think that people can, become conflict avoidant. or they can become it happens to a lot of Buddhists, right? They think they have to be lovey-dovey, compassionate, and kind all the time, and they become a doormat for the world. And people take advantage of them, and they're easily manipulated, and they avoid conflict. And so that's not what we're trying to do. But yeah, I think that we can be out of balance with just about anything. I think that's one thing that's so good about Buddhist teachings is it's always about a middle way.
Yeah,
so how do we be in the middle?
Yeah, the equanimity. Yeah. It's just fascinating.
So we can become too tolerant. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you were very non-dogmatic about your approach to recovery as well. I mean, you talk about how this program or that program could work for everybody. And it depends on what works for you, and you're pretty open to a lot of different systems of recovery or processes of recovery. And I did want to ask you about, lately we're hearing more and more scientific trials and evidence about MDMA and mushrooms or psilocybin and DMT and maybe even LSD as far as a tool for psychotherapy or addiction treatment. I mean, and then there's a whole bunch of other ones as well, ibogaine and all that. What do you think about those types of solutions to this?
What's that other one? Kratom?
Well, Kratom's more of a painkiller, I think, but but it has helped people as well.
That's right. And if you asked me this question 5 years ago, it would have been a different answer.
Right,
I've gotten to be a lot more liberal. One of the things that really helped me is that working as a substance abuse professional and working in treatment centers and just looking at the basic map of it. When it comes to helping people recover from addiction, we ain't crushing it. We ain't even kind of crushing it. And we have the best advancements. We have all these new curriculums, all this new science, all this new research, and the numbers are just as bad as they were 60 fucking years ago.
Are they really?
They haven't gotten any better. In fact, one could argue that the boulder is going down the mountain, not up the mountain. So that being the case, if somebody's like dying and strung out on heroin, maybe they should go down to Mexico and take some ibogaine. Like, what's the loss? So I feel a lot more liberal about different approaches, and I'm also suspicious about some of them as well. So I just think that when we look at, if I was working with an individual, for example, if we were going to triage the situation, I would look at them and say, well, maybe ayahuasca and ibogaine wouldn't be my first recommendation for like trying to get clean or sober. But, you meet these people who have been in and out of AA for 15 years and they've been to treatment 27 times and they're the chronic relapser. Maybe that guy, fuck it, send him to South Africa, let him take some ibogaine and some ayahuasca. I don't know. What's to lose?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. I think there could be solutions for different people. I mean, I've also seen people in recovery that have, came out of addiction through acid, even LSD or ecstasy as well. I mean, people can also get, even though those can be helpful, it's not like you're out of the clear with those types of drugs as well. I mean, and then I hear about guys like, let's say Graham Hancock, right, who had that ayahuasca experience. It healed his pot addiction. He had a chronic pot addiction. But then he's been to ayahuasca. He's done the ayahuasca ceremony like, I don't know, 50 or 70 or 80 times or something. So I think there's a risk that just becomes the new addiction as well. I mean, you're just, like they say, you're switching deck chairs on the Titanic. So I think
back on the weed.
Yeah, that's it.
Rogan got him back on the weed.
Well, yeah, and then so who knows? I think that's still a risk.
It is. There's always a risk. I mean, that's the problem. And, if you look at, some of the studies that I've read around ibogaine, it does work for a lot of people. But if you track the people long term, that a lot of people, if they don't maintain after about a year or 18 months, they usually relapse. So I think that what happens is and I think AA does a really brilliant job of making an argument for this thing called, my sobriety is contingent upon the development of the maintenance of my spiritual condition.
Right.
I think that's a page out of the big book that I'll always take.
Right.
You have to maintain, addiction isn't a switch that gets switched off and you're just all better now. I mean, I think that's a pretty safe argument to make. but it's more of like a volume knob that we can get our hands on. But we have to be doing something lifestyle-wise and therapeutically or spiritually or whatever word you like. We have to be engaging in some kind of process that is continuing to readjust that strong addictive tendency. Or I think that people typically just don't make it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's what I mean. I've always said as well in the step 11, which is that that sort of meditative aspect. The prayer and meditation thing would be one of the most underrated aspects of it, and that's kind of where I like this refuge recovery that's come out. I mean, when I was in rehab, I read Noah Levine's book, actually, Dharma Punks and Against the Stream, which is now the society that you do or you used to teach through. And so that brings me to that kind of refuge recovery, which is really a Buddhist-orientated path in recovery. Do you want to mention a little bit about that as one of these programs and tools, and maybe how you got into that?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a long road process, but I guess it started with this, is that, it started actually with people like Kevin Griffin, who started Buddhism in the 12 Steps. He wrote a book called Buddhism in the 12 Steps about 15 years ago.
Yeah,
so what happened was people were starting to use, people in AA were starting to use Buddhism kind of through the 11th step. And so there have been there's actually been several books written about Buddhism in the 12 steps. And so what emerged in treatment and in 12 steps and kind of in this subculture was like these sort of 12-step Buddhist people. And so there's a way you can incorporate Buddhism in the 12 steps. And Noah Levine, what he wanted to do was to sort of say, well, Buddhism in the 12 steps is great, but what if we politely put the 12 steps aside and just looked at Buddhism? What if we just used Buddhism to recover from addiction? Would that actually work?
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote the book Refuge Recovery, and he kind of landed in this core Buddhist idea of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, which, if you look at it, makes a lot of sense. It's basically sort of a treatment plan. And, of course, the core of that is meditation. And so he wrote the book, and then we started having meetings. And this nonprofit organization, really, which is the core of what Refuge is a way for people to, so you live in Calgary or somebody lives in Des Moines, Iowa, and they want to meditate as part of the recovery. Well, there's nowhere for them to go. So the point was to start these peer-led meetings where people had a book, they had a program where they could meet, much like the 12 steps, and use community through a different kind of lens or a different kind of process to address addiction. And, I think it's so far been a very, very great experiment. We'll see where it goes. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And then Refuge, you get a whole hodgepodge of people. You get 12-step people who go. You get people who don't want to go to 12 steps. You go to a Refuge recovery meeting. You might have some NA people, some AA people, some Al-Anon people. It just what Refuge did, I think that was brilliant, is it removed the symptomology. It's actually not about drugs or alcohol. It's about the fact that there's something about my life that's so hard that I need to engage in destructive behaviors to medicate myself.
Yeah.
So it comes at it from a much different angle. And I think that, with the science around addiction and mindfulness, I think it's going to help a lot of people. It's not for everybody. It's not going to work for everybody. It's just like AA is not for everybody. And I just think there needs to be more options that don't, treatment centers, right? $20,000 a month. Like, how many drug addicts get $20,000 tucked away for treatment? So it's another way in which people can go out into their community, get some recovery support without having to break out their checkbook or credit card.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially how I think what happens with people, and especially nowadays, is alcohol and drugs is such a tandem sort of issue that, you go to AA and you can't say you're an addict, and you go to NA and you can't say you're an alcoholic. I mean, not that you can't, but, a lot of these older groups, you kind of have to go along with, you can't really, when you go to AA, you should be saying you're an alcoholic and but Refuge, you're whatever your addiction is, like it's all you can talk about, whatever you want. And you don't say anything behind your name. It's very non-dogmatic and open, and you do your little meditation and then you're sharing. So, what was it like seeing a new program like that develop and grow? I mean, it must have been pretty interesting, having helped so many people right off the bat.
It was interesting. You know, it was interesting. It was also a little bit strange because I was kind of, you know, we started talking about it 7 years ago. So, you know, it got to a point where actually when it started to catch on and become popular, I was in a weird sort of way almost tired of it, you know, and because I put so much time and so much energy into it, you know. So, I mean, I'm really happy that it's going strong, and I feel grateful to have been somebody who's been able to really help it. But, you know, Noah Levine really did the most of the heavy lifting, and he wrote the book and was able to use his popularity as a teacher and as a guy in recovery to really get things started. So, you know, I'm doing less and less with it nowadays, mostly because I feel like it's standing on its own. You know, I was the executive director for the nonprofit for about a year and kind of got it to a good place, but that wasn't a really great fit for me. It was not something I had a lot of experience with. So it's kind of like, you know, I feel like it's kind of, you know, out there. It's kind of walking on its own. So I'm curious to keep an eye on it, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. And so I feel really, really good about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned how the recovery rate has been dismal in society since AA started in the 30s or whatever. I mean, I don't know, I don't know the stats of how it's gone up and down, but I would think it would be improving, especially like you said, with all these tools and different programs and processes we have and education and knowledge. But do you think it's what's counteracting that is all this new stuff like fentanyl and all these newer, harder drugs? That, I mean, it seems to me like things are, even since I've been involved in this, been way worse now than they were even 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a couple things. I think that the world is a more challenging place to live in than it used to be. So I think people in general are having a harder time, more so than any other time in human history, you know, because of the political landscape and the economical landscape. I mean, the world's a stressful place. The modern world is a hard place to live in. So I think that there's that. So the added stress, you know, would give rise to the added need for taking the edge off, if you will. And I also think the modern delivery system is so advanced now. It's just so easy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you used to have to go to a bad neighborhood and get it from the dope man and get ripped off maybe or beat up. Now you just go to the doctor with like a hurt back, you know, and like, you know, even like, you know, like if you look at addiction through a broader lens, like you look at sex addiction and porn addiction, you know, like teenagers used to have to steal a penthouse from 7-Eleven, and now it's just one click away on the phone. It's like, so the delivery system for addiction behaviors is just like, you know, it's like McDonald's, dude. It's just like right there for you. So I think the combination of those two things, and I could totally be wrong, but those two things seem to be the big instigators to all of this.
No, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I wonder why it seems like the places that do go like full decriminalization seem to have better luck. You know what I mean? Because it just seems weird to me. It seems like it's hardwired into the human experience almost in some ways. Because
it's illegal?
It's like it's hard to be alive these days, sure. And in a lot of ways it is. It's some of the toughest times to be alive. But at the same time, you know, most people way more people have access to food, water, heat, shelter, the internet, iPhones, all these different social programs. Like from a lot of different angles, we've got it better. Even the poorest people in Western society have it a whole lot better than we did, say, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, but just because you think we're technologically more advanced, that doesn't mean that people are doing better, or, you know, they might be more of a slave than they used to be. You know, they used to find their food and shelter in other ways, and things were simpler. Now you've got this.
It almost seems like it's the community itself. Like you could do it with any community. Like, not to shortchange this, but like the AA is kind of a community. And with me, it was having kids. So then I had that family sort of unit as a community. And with other people, it's, you know, if they just fall into the right group of friends, they can beat something.
Oh, they do say that connection has it. So you're talking about connection.
Yeah, but then at the same time, we've got this crazy over-socialization of a planet, which doesn't seem to be helping. So it just seems, you know, at what level, I wonder if it comes back to that 150 number.
Yeah.
Well, it's also, you know, you're right. I think that you're right in the sense that people, there's two things. There's one, there's a lack of connection. I mean, people have 3,000 Facebook friends, but they don't actually have somebody that they can actually talk to face, which is why we looked at there's a study that was done about why the 12 steps was so helpful. Why does the 12 steps work? And what they landed in was the community aspect of it. So people don't have the connection that they probably think that they have. And also too, using a more of a Buddhist idea, is we've externalized happiness to the point where people are so vacant in their inner lives. We've externalized happiness. Get the iPhone, get the new car, get the Tesla, get this, get that. That people think that if they get the conditions of their life, really, really looking good on the outside, that they'll be happy. And I think that we've just found out that that's actually not true.
That's why you need to join the chats. Because people are finding happiness in the chats.
Oh, we have a perpetual chat room. Like, it's actually just an app, and people are in there all the time chatting with each other. It's sort of building connection and community. Like,
people have quit smoking.
Yeah, some people are in recovery.
Some people are quitting drugs. Other people, there's like 5 or 6 people in our chats that are in the process of quitting something.
Wow,
or have recently quit something.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's the connection in the community you're talking about.
Yeah.
So Dave, does that have something to do with you moving from LA to Colorado then?
Well, probably. I mean, a couple things. One is I moved to Los Angeles pretty reluctantly. LA is not a kind of place that I ever really wanted to live, and so I moved there mostly because I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and I wanted to move, and I was going to move to the Bay Area, which wasn't a great idea. I moved to LA because it was the right thing to do at the time, and I have no regrets about that. But I went there with kind of an idea that I would be there for about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then I actually got in a really bad motorcycle accident last year, and I almost died.
Jesus.
So that slowed me down a little bit. So I had this very near-death experience. And at the time also, too, my girlfriend and I got together, and my friend Shannon, who I had been friends with and involved in teaching meditation for years, we got together and kind of fell in love, and we're kind of plotting this escape plan of like, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And I've had my eyes on Colorado for a long time because my mom and dad are out here and my sister's out here, and it's beautiful out here. But, we live in a town with 1,500 people. I didn't want to move here when I was single, that was for sure. So, there was a whole wide range of reasons to move here. Those are some of the big ones. But I really wanted to get back to nature. I wanted to have some land. I wanted to get back to a lifestyle that was going to be more conducive to my Dharma practice. I wanted more spaciousness. I didn't want to have to be making the amount of money I needed to make to live in LA. I also wanted to have a lifestyle that was more ecologically aware. I didn't want to buy, 24 plastic cups from Starbucks every week and, live a consumer-based lifestyle. I wanted to get some land and grow some of my own food and get chickens. And I really kind of wanted to have a lifestyle that was more in line with being, we were building a house and we're looking at solar power. So I just really wanted to, I wasn't feeling good about the amount of consumerism that I took place in.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. That's been a trend on the show. Even we've talked about that a lot, your own farming and, growing your own food. I mean, that's also one of the only ways to really stay healthy nowadays is to just do your own thing like that. I mean, you don't know where everything's coming from, and there's so much processed crap out there. So yeah, that's a great step. Hey, before I forget to talk about this, because I think it's a really important part of recovery, is the renunciation part about it. Because you hear in different types of programs now and stuff, there's the harm reduction model and this type of thing. And I've always appreciated learning about that. Like, something clicked for me that I realized I had to give it all up, in a way, not play around with this stuff. Do you want to, and I thought that, that's kind of the way you thought about it too from the workshop that you did. Do you think you could address that a little bit about why renunciation may be very important?
Well, I think renunciation is radically important. And the problem with renunciation, I think, is the word itself. It's not a word that we use every day. So, it comes from the Buddhist paradigm. Of course, they're not the only people who use it. But there's not a great word that there's not a great synonym for renunciation. So in the schema of abstinence, even that's kind of a charged word, but yeah. Abstinence, renunciation, just stop, like it didn't work for Nancy Reagan was talking about abstinence in the 80s and that didn't work. Just say no. So, so I just want to say that abstinence is a big setup right out of the gate. So it's important to kind of unpack it a little bit, I think. And so when we look at the Buddhist practice, mindfulness practice, is that renunciation is part of intention. So we have to understand that everything in our lives rests on the tip of intention, the tip of motivation. So we don't get it right all the time. So I think what happens with renunciation, to me, renunciation just means not needing anything extra. It means I'm able to have less. I can live without drugs and alcohol. I can live without, 24 plastic cups of Starbucks a week or whatever. But what it is, I think that we actually have to come to some place where we can identify the need for that renunciation. And that's a hard one for a lot of people. It's just like, it's a little bit of a sacrifice, right? Here's what it is actually. It's a little bit of a sacrifice. It's making a choice to do without. But what you're doing actually in the paradigm of our culture is you're choosing to do something a little bit better than immediate gratification, because we are an immediate gratification culture. And even addiction is a process of immediate gratification. Renunciation is kind of taking a high road that says, you know what? I'm going to deal with the stress and the tolerance of not getting this thing right now because I'm looking for long-term results. So renunciation is kind of about seeing the big picture. And it's about making small sacrifices, one small sacrifice at a time, so that way you're heading into a different direction, which is ultimately about creating a lifestyle. A lifestyle that supports genuine happiness and recovery and your core values. And there's a rub to it, because it means you're kind of going to have to do without, the bowl of ice cream and the Netflix at 11 p.m., or you're going to have to do without, there's a sacrifice to be made in renunciation, and people don't like that.
Wait, how come I'm losing the ice cream here?
Exactly. You don't like that. I was just giving an example of something I knew you weren't going to want to hear.
No, but there's a deeper reason as well, I believe. You could unpack a little bit more even to say that there's a physical trigger. Like if I, and you hear that from people relapsing all the time, right? Is I thought I would be okay. I just wanted one. And then sure enough, that one turns into, it might take a day or a few days or a couple of weeks or a few months, but inevitably you go back there.
That's right. Yep. And so that's the other side of the coin that I didn't get to. You're totally right about that, is we have to see the danger in the not renunciation. We have to have a healthy level of respect for the danger of what will happen to us if we don't practice renunciation. So it's a little bit of that AA, like cost-benefit analysis, analogy that they throw around sometimes. So again, it's like looking at the big picture, reading the tape through and saying, like, you know what, I can manage this trigger, or I'm going to choose. This is why mindfulness is so good. It helps you manage in the present time when you're feeling like you want to use, or you feel triggered, or whatever word you want to throw at it. It allows you to get through that experience without actually having to pick up the destructive behavior. So, you could say mindfulness is your best friend when it comes to renunciation.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of fits in with the craving part as well. So we had this guest on a little while back, and he was talking about, he was living in Japan. I think he was an American, and he was learning about Buddhism, and he was learning at it from a different side. Yeah, Ricard. And he had a different view of Buddhism. He says that it's been translated differently in some of our Asian cultures, and the main thing is bono, which is your fear. I guess is fear holds you back from living. You should be
walking downtown in women's underwear. That was the moral of the story.
The moral of the story was, that holds you back, and that if you can attack your fear, then that's how happiness starts. And he had a whole bunch of different examples of how he has been through. When he sees the fear, when he feels the fear, he attacks it, and he gets through all these things. And And really, that's where your spiritual growth and happiness comes from. And now, whether that's I wanted to get your opinion on that as far as like a Buddhist principle. If it's something that you've learned or approached or heard about. And then on the other side of that, is that a healthy way to approach recovery? Because it could end up, backfiring a little bit in recovery if you're dealing with addiction and trying to face fears too early and you're, on your journey. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, there's a little bit of a problematic aspect to what you're saying. First of all, the problematic nature of this word Buddhism, because there's so many kinds of Buddhism, and so this is one perspective that this guy's talking about. Now, that's nothing that I've ever been familiar with or ever heard of before, of this Bono or this seer thing in early Buddhism, which is more my practice is what would be called the Theravadan school, or what I just call early Buddhism, which is going back to the original source. Fear doesn't play a big role in that. I think that fear is so primal that I think that from my perspective, fear is sort of benign in the sense of fear is not wholesome or unwholesome. That fear is actually quite necessary and is also quite problematic. If you had no fear, you'd walk in front of a bus tomorrow. So you can have, I think it's a middle way. You can have too much fear and you can have not enough fear. So again, is fear a tool or is it a weapon?
Well, you need to learn to rationalize between fear and danger, right? I think that's, you got me saying right, Dunlap. Ugh.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that, fear is something that we have to come to terms with. It's not going anywhere. But we have to, and we're also different. The big book talks about fear being this corrosive thread that, the fabric of our existence is shot through with it. So, fear definitely is a big factor in suffering or a big factor in recovery. But I think there's a multiple ways that you can address fear. And I think that everybody's a little bit different. So I think we have to have some self-knowledge and have done some inventory around our fears before we can start trying to come up with antidotes on how to manage our fears.
Yeah, that's a good point. So where do you see addiction and going in the next, or addiction treatment, helping it out in the next 10, 20 years or so? Like, is there hope that it's going to that we're going to break through something and even like our respect for this will change as we grow up in society, and maybe it's these dangers are treated differently as when we're younger?
Yeah, I really don't know. I'm very curious. I'm interested in addiction as a phenomenon. For me personally, I'm going down the route of a more of an emotional intelligence approach. And I'm working with one of my friends, Eve Ekman, who has a whole system for training around what she calls cultivating emotional balance. And my experience personally, like if I'm honest about my suffering, the area in my life that I still find the most challenge is my emotional life. I'm pretty happy physically, mentally. I feel like my attitude's good. I don't really engage in too many behaviors that seem problematic. But the area of my life that's still hard for me are my emotions. And I think that when you look at addiction treatment and you look at people in early recovery, what makes it so hard is emotions. And I don't think that we've developed or offered a framework or a set of practices that really allow people to, A, get a good education about emotions, what they are, how they work, and what we can expect, and also, B, a type of contemplative practice or a mind-body awareness practice where people basically learn how to access and manage emotions. I think that that's a missing piece, and that's kind of the direction that I'm heading in.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that we're overprescribed, and whenever you go somewhere with an emotional problem, you get some sort of drug prescribed to you, which I think is part of the main problem. Yeah. I have an addiction lecture that I give called "A War on Emotions," and I think as a culture and a society, we've declared war against emotions, against difficult emotions and difficult mind states. So if I'm sad, there's something wrong with me, and I need to go get the sadness fixed. And that's the whole problem. That's the whole reason people get addicted in the first place.
there are emotions. They're not going anywhere. You're going to get sad. You're going to get angry. You're going to have fear. You're going to have contempt and disgust and shame. They're hardwired into our evolutionary system. So we have to learn how to manage and balance and work with emotions, not medicate them.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that brings us to like what you're doing right now for work. You're doing some personal development with people as well as still teaching meditation and doing workshops and stuff like that. You want to talk about how you're putting this into practice to help people, this emotional intelligence approach?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I do every day is try to figure out what it is that I'm doing. So, I mean, I also want to say first and foremost that I do consider myself a student, of all these practices. And I'm doing a lot of training this year, and I'm sitting a lot of retreats. And, I also feel like part of what I do is my own process. And I'm not done yet, dude. I'm not recovered. I'm in process still. But what I do is, I teach mindfulness. I teach Buddhist retreats. So I teach 3-day, 5-day, 7-day silent retreats around the country,
Wow.
Different places. That's a big part of what I do. I also do one-on-one mentoring, and I do it over Skype and FaceTime, and I have students that I meet with every 2 weeks for 30 minutes, people who want to start, develop, and maintain a daily meditation practice, and I coach people through that. I also provide training, basically like emotional intelligence and mindfulness trainings for various mental health agencies or substance abuse treatment. I was just in Salt Lake last week doing training for this really great program called Recovery Ways in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I'm trying to do collaborations with programs that are already that are actually good programs, who just want to integrate some of the stuff that I teach into their program. So I really kind of a Swiss Army knife in all of this. And I get bored easy, so I can't just do one thing. I like to do mentoring, and I like to speak, and I like to do training, and I like to do consulting, and I just like collaborating with people. So I do a lot of different things, A, because I need to, and B, because I just like doing different things. So I'm excited about the stuff that I get to do, and I feel grateful that my recovery has sort of put me into this weird career where I do all these great things. And mostly what I do is I teach people what I've done.
Yeah.
And I kind of land in that big book analogy of, you can't transmit something that you don't have.
Yeah.
So I really only offer people what I have found to be true and useful for myself. And I do have, of course, a kind of a nerdy background in academic Buddhism, and I do study early Buddhism in a way that's probably a little bit academic. So I'm kind of a wealth of knowledge that not everybody's interested in, but that's kind of where that goes.
What does your daily sitting practice look like? Or even if it is daily, sorry, I shouldn't even assume it's daily, but.
Well, it changes a lot. I do a lot of things that I do a lot of hiking and walking, and I do a lot of practices that wouldn't be considered traditional.
Yeah.
But as far as sitting practice goes, basically what I've done for the last couple of years is I sit at least 3 times a week. I sit for 1 hour. I do these 1 hour meditations where I do kind of a whole bunch of reflective practices using kind of, I don't even know, like kind of not technique that are more intuitive practices and kind of more about my own process. But I do sit for at least 3 hours a week that way, and then I'll sit for 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and I teach a lot. So if I'm teaching, I'm meditating a lot. So I wouldn't say that I sit every day, but I do engage, and so it just gets strange after a while. Like, what is gets to the point like, well, what is meditation anyway? Now, so, yeah. But I do have a sitting practice, and I do sit retreats. I'm sitting 3 1-week retreats this year and doing some training. So I'm getting more back into my student domain, and I feel pretty good about that. And curious to see what's going to happen next.
Nice. Is there anything you think that we left out that's important for people to know before we wrap it up?
I mean, you can, some shameless self-promotion, but also just to let people know, I do have some free resources If you go to iTunes, I have a podcast on
that's
iTunes
right. Yeah.
called Rebel Saint Dharma, and you can just go to podcast and subscribe. It's free, and it has the different talks that I've given and some meditations on there. And also I have a website called Rebel Saint Dharma, which has my schedule. If you're interested in kind of coming to sit with me or see what I'm up to, you can see my schedule for the years up there. And also you can find out the services that I offer if you're interested in having me mentor or come and speak, or so you can kind of find out what I'm doing at rebelsaintdharma.com.
Right on, Dave. Thanks so much for coming on and talking about this. I've really wanted to do like a full sort of show on recovery and dig into it a little bit. Like I said, we've got some listeners here that have been through it in the last couple of years, and more seem to be quitting things. So I think it's appropriate timing for this, and really appreciate your time getting into all this and being so honest and open.
Oh, no, absolutely, man. I'm always happy to talk about these things. It's my primary interest. So I appreciate that we got a chance to meet in Calgary when I was up there, and hopefully we'll be back at some point. And and just, anything, if anybody finds any of our conversation useful or helpful, then, that's the whole reason we do this stuff, is to try to be of service and be helpful to other people. So hopefully that some of that has arisen as our time here on the phone tonight.
Oh, for sure. You bet. All right, Dave.
Right on.
Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
Dave.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, we'll catch you guys later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was a chat with Dave Smith, Refuge and Recovery.
What'd you think of
Buddhist.
that?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's good.
Did any of it resonate with you at all? The mindfulness aspect?
Yeah, some of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I seem to not grapple with those demons as much as some people. I mean,
Well, you quit
smoke my
nicotine.
weed, but I
now,
quit nicotine, and
And drinking. You don't drink as much anymore, but
I don't really
you weren't
drink
really
at all.
in that.
But those are all just things I just kind of decided.
Yeah.
On my own,
Yeah.
I just enough is enough. A lot of it was my kids. When I had my kids, I quit drinking.
What
And then
about
when
your-
my kids asked me to quit smoking, I quit smoking.
What about this thing? This chronic
The
dope
weed, I don't
smoking
think I'll
weed?
quit smoking.
No.
I mean, I don't see it happening.
No. Would you ever cut it down, cut it back at all?
Maybe.
Yeah. Go like a week and just see how you feel when you
I
take
feel
your first.
annoyed, mostly with you.
Right now.
No,
Oh, you would feel it
when I'm at work, not stoned.
so that's your coping mechanism.
When I get home, I have
Yeah.
to relax from all the gramisms at work.
Oh boy, hey, you're blaming me, eh? Just throwing that, just pointing the finger, eh?
It's all Graham's fault. Anyway, big thanks to Dave Smith for coming on the show. If you guys need some help, there's a place to go.
Yeah,
So
all
you
the
can
links
start
will be in
anyway.
the show notes for Dave's work.
And clearly
Yeah.
it's proven that the chats can help. So maybe if you just want
That's
to see
right.
if you have a problem, go in the chats and we'll let you know if you have a problem. And we'll help you deal with it. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and check out his podcast too. I listened to the last 4 or 5. It was pretty good. Like, he's got meditations in there. So if people want to just take that, like, you can almost take the 4 foundations of mindfulness, right? Just listening to his podcast.
There you have it. And of course, check out Grimerica.ca/support, guys, so we can keep doing this shit. Keep the bills paid, keep the heat on. Winter's coming. It gets cold, needs heat, not cheap. So yeah, check out Grimerica.ca/support, guys. If you're getting some value for the show, do throw some value back our way.
Yeah, that helps. Couldn't do it without you.
Closing in on 250 eps here real quick.
Not including the bonus apps.
Not including the bonus eps and the eps you get for being a supporter. There's more in there. And we did it all for free. So throw a little value our way, motherfuckers. It helps. It really does.
It does, yeah, for sure.
Helps. And Libsyn just adjusted their stats. The numbers are all down. So a couple subscribers help us feel a little better.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk us back from the edge of the cliff.
Oh, it doesn't matter about the numbers.
Does if they stop listening altogether.
Yeah, for sure.
Mind you, we get away
No,
with more
but
shit.
we're getting more listeners.
Are we?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. Share the show, motherfuckers. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
You fussing, you fighting when you come around. Won't be enough. Well, come on and get me. I'm homesick and I'm bored. that you could ever need to know about the show, it's in the show notes. Everything that you could ever need to know about the show, it's in the show notes. So go on over to Grimerica.ca or Grimerica.com. Take a look around and see what you can find. See what you can find. See what you can find. Everything that you could ever need to know, it's in the show notes. Everything that you could ever need to know about this particular show, it's in the show notes. Show notes, show notes, show notes, show notes, show notes.
And now, another adventure in Coffee Enemas.
Oh, man. Oh, good. Oh, you just gotta get to the washroom. Okay, almost there. Oh, one more step. Okay. Oh, God. I just gotta get these pants off. Oh, it's here! Oh, it's over. Oh, thank God. It's over. Well, all right then. What is this? What is this I feel inside of me? All this power. All this invigorating energy. I feel like I can arm wrestle a moose. I gotta keep going. I gotta move. I gotta run. Oh my God! Honey, I'm going for a run!